The unexpected arrival. Ethan Harper stepped into his home after a long day at work, the familiar scent of cedarwood and fresh linen wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. He had been looking forward to this moment all week, a chance to unwind in the solitude of his spacious abode. But as he entered the living room, he was greeted by an unexpected sight that made him stop in his tracks. Standing by the large bay window was a woman he had never seen before. Her presence seemed to fill the room with an energy that was both unsettling and intriguing. She was tall, with long chestnut hair cascading down her back, and her sharp green eyes sparkled with curiosity as they met his. Dressed in a crisp black and white uniform that contrasted sharply with the warm tones of the room, she looked both professional and oddly out of place. "Good evening, Mr. Harper," she said, her voice smooth like silk. "I'm Lila, your new housekeeper." Ethan blinked in surprise, trying to process her sudden appearance. He had not been informed of any new staff member arriving today. "I wasn't aware I needed a new housekeeper," he replied cautiously, his mind racing. Lila smiled warmly, but there was something enigmatic about her demeanor that made him uneasy. "The agency sent me over after your previous housekeeper retired last month. I hope you don't mind my early arrival. I wanted to get a feel for the place before you came home." "Right," Ethan said slowly, still trying to shake off the initial shock. "Well, I appreciate your initiative." He walked further into the room, taking in the sight of her neatly arranged cleaning supplies on the polished wooden table. It was clear she had already made herself at home, a little too quickly for his liking. As he moved toward the kitchen to pour himself a drink, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about this situation. He glanced back at Lila, who was now dusting off a shelf with meticulous care. There was an intensity in her movements that suggested she was not just here to clean. She seemed almost vigilant. "Do you always start work this early?" Ethan asked casually, attempting to gauge her character. Lila paused for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly as if considering her response. "I believe in being thorough," she said finally. "A clean environment is essential for clarity of mind." Ethan nodded but remained skeptical. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, hoping it would help ease his unease about this unexpected arrangement. As he took a sip, he felt the warmth spread through him, but it did little to quell his curiosity about Lila. "Have you worked as a housekeeper long?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Long enough," she replied cryptically, her gaze unwavering as if she could see right through him. Ethan felt an odd tension building between them, a mix of intrigue and caution. He decided it was best not to pry too much into her past. After all, everyone had their secrets. As night fell outside and shadows danced across the walls, Ethan tried to shake off his discomfort and focus on relaxing. He settled into his favorite armchair with a book but found himself distracted by Lila's presence in the periphery of his vision. She moved gracefully around the room, dusting surfaces, rearranging items, her movements fluid yet purposeful. He couldn't help but admire how efficiently she worked. There was an elegance to it that drew him in despite his reservations. "Do you need any help?" he finally asked after watching her for what felt like an eternity. Lila paused mid-motion and turned to face him, a hint of surprise flickering across her features before being replaced by that same enigmatic smile. "No need for that, Mr. Harper. I've got everything under control." Ethan raised an eyebrow at her confidence but decided not to press further. Instead, he returned to his book while stealing glances at Lila as she continued her tasks. Minutes turned into hours as dusk deepened into night, and soon Ethan found himself yawning despite his earlier excitement about finishing his book. He glanced at Lila again. She was now organizing some books on the shelf with meticulous precision. "Are you planning on staying up all night?" he asked playfully. "I'm here until everything is perfect," she replied without missing a beat. Ethan chuckled softly but felt a strange sense of admiration for her dedication mixed with concern for how hard she seemed to be pushing herself. Finally deciding it was time for bed, he stood up and stretched before making his way toward the staircase leading up to his bedroom. "Good night, Lila," he called over his shoulder as he ascended the stairs. "Good night, Mr. Harper," she replied cheerfully. As Ethan reached the top of the stairs and turned down the hallway toward his bedroom, he couldn't shake off a feeling of unease that lingered in the air, a sensation that perhaps this new chapter in his life would not be as simple as he had hoped. Lying in bed later that night, Ethan stared at the ceiling, lost in thought about Lila's sudden arrival and what it might mean for him moving forward. Just as he began to drift off into sleep, he heard a soft noise from downstairs, a faint sound that made him bolt upright in bed. His heart raced as he listened intently. It sounded like something shifting or moving around in the living room below. With adrenaline coursing through him, Ethan swung his legs over the side of the bed and padded quietly toward the door. Peering down from the top of the staircase into the dimly lit living room below, Ethan squinted but saw nothing out of place, just shadows playing tricks on his mind. It must have been nothing, or perhaps just Lila finishing up some last-minute tasks before calling it a night. But as he turned back toward his bedroom door, another noise echoed through the silence, a soft whisper that sent chills down his spine. "Mr. Harper." Ethan froze at the sound of Lila's voice drifting up from below, the tone low and almost melodic yet laced with something darker that made him hesitate before descending further into uncertainty. Unraveling secrets. Ethan stood frozen at the top of the staircase, his heart pounding in his chest as he strained to hear Lila's voice echoing from below. The soft whisper sent a shiver down his spine, and he felt an inexplicable urge to descend the stairs, despite the apprehension gnawing at him. "Mr. Harper," she had called out, but there was something in her tone that felt off, almost as if she were beckoning him into a hidden world he was not prepared to enter. Taking a deep breath, Ethan steeled himself and moved cautiously down the stairs. Each step creaked underfoot, amplifying the tension in the air. As he reached the bottom, he found Lila standing in the living room, her back turned to him as she gazed out of the window into the night. The moonlight cast an ethereal glow around her, making her appear almost otherworldly. "Lila?" Ethan called softly, trying to keep his voice steady. She turned slowly, a smile playing on her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she said, her voice smooth yet laced with an underlying tension. "I was just admiring the view." Ethan felt a wave of unease wash over him. "Is everything all right? I thought I heard something." Lila's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something, fear, crossing her features before she masked it with that same serene smile. "Just the wind," she replied dismissively. "It can be quite haunting at night." Ethan studied her for a moment, noting how her hands fidgeted slightly at her sides. There was more to Lila than met the eye, he could sense it. "Are you sure? You seem tense." She stepped closer, and Ethan caught a whiff of something floral mixed with a hint of something sharper, an aroma that seemed to linger in the air around her. "I'm fine," she insisted, but there was an edge to her voice that made him question her sincerity. "All right," Ethan said slowly, deciding not to press further for now. "But if there's anything bothering you—" "I appreciate your concern," Lila interrupted gently. "But I promise I'm here to help you." With that, she turned back toward the window, leaving Ethan feeling more unsettled than before. He couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something hidden beneath her composed exterior, a secret waiting to be uncovered. As he retreated back up the stairs, Ethan resolved to keep a closer eye on Lila. He needed to understand who she was and why she had come into his life so suddenly. The following days passed with an odd rhythm as Lila settled into her role within Ethan's home. She maintained an impeccable standard of cleanliness and organization, but there were moments when Ethan caught glimpses of a different side to her, an intensity in her gaze when she thought no one was watching or a fleeting shadow of sadness that crossed her face during quiet moments. One evening, as Ethan returned from work, he noticed Lila sitting at the kitchen table with an open book before her. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated her features, casting delicate shadows across her face. "What are you reading?" he asked casually as he poured himself a glass of water. Lila looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes before she smiled warmly. "Just some poetry," she replied, gesturing toward the pages filled with elegant script. Ethan approached and peered over her shoulder at the words flowing across the page, a collection of verses about longing and loss. "It seems deep," he commented. "It is," Lila said softly, tracing a finger along one of the lines as if it held some profound meaning for her. "Words have a way of expressing what we sometimes cannot say aloud." Intrigued by this glimpse into her thoughts, Ethan took a seat across from her. "Do you write poetry too?" She hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "No. I prefer reading others' words." There was a wistfulness in her tone that made Ethan want to delve deeper into her past. "Why is that?" he asked gently. Lila looked up at him then, and for a brief moment, he saw vulnerability in those green eyes, an openness that made his heart ache for reasons he couldn't fully comprehend. Because sometimes it's easier to hide behind someone else's words than to face your own truth. Ethan felt compelled to share something of himself in return. "I get that," he admitted quietly. "I've spent years building walls around myself too." Her gaze intensified as if searching for something within him, a connection they both craved yet feared acknowledging. "Maybe we can help each other tear those walls down," Lila suggested softly. Before Ethan could respond, they were interrupted by a sudden crash from somewhere deep within the house, a sound so loud it resonated through the walls like thunder. "What was that?" Ethan exclaimed, adrenaline surging through him as he shot up from his chair. "I don't know," Lila replied quickly, rising to follow him as they both moved toward the source of the noise, the basement door. With each step toward the door leading down into darkness, Ethan felt an unsettling sense of foreboding wash over him. He hesitated at first but then reached for the doorknob and twisted it open. The dim light from above barely illuminated the staircase leading down into shadows thick enough to feel alive. He glanced back at Lila. She stood close behind him, concern etched across her features. "Stay close," Ethan instructed as he descended into the depths below. The air grew cooler as they ventured further down, each creak of wood beneath their feet echoed ominously around them. As they reached the bottom step and stepped onto solid ground, they were met with an eerie silence that seemed almost oppressive. "Do you see anything?" Lila whispered beside him. Ethan squinted into the darkness but saw nothing unusual at first glance, just boxes stacked haphazardly against one wall and old furniture draped in dust covers. Then he noticed something glinting near one corner, a shard of glass reflecting what little light filtered down from above. "What is that?" Lila asked nervously as they moved closer together. As they approached the glimmering object on the floor, Ethan bent down and picked it up carefully, a broken piece of glass from one of his old picture frames. But there was something else lying next to it, a small notebook bound in worn leather with frayed edges. "What's this?" he murmured aloud as he opened it cautiously. Inside were pages filled with scrawled notes and sketches, drawings depicting strange symbols alongside fragmented thoughts about fear and escape. His heart raced as he flipped through more pages filled with chaotic handwriting that spoke of someone trapped within their own mind, someone desperate for freedom from whatever haunted them. This is disturbing," Lila said softly beside him as she peered over his shoulder at the notebook's contents. "Who would leave this here?" Ethan wondered aloud as unease settled heavily in his stomach. Suddenly, they heard another noise, a faint rustling coming from somewhere deeper within the basement followed by what sounded like whispers echoing through darkness around them. "What is happening?" Lila asked urgently as they exchanged worried glances. Ethan felt an instinctual urge to protect her surge within him. Whatever secrets lay hidden in this house were beginning to unravel before their eyes, and neither of them knew what awaited them next in this labyrinthine mystery they had stumbled upon together. The tension builds. Ethan stood in the dim light of the basement, the eerie atmosphere thickening around him and Lila as they processed the unsettling discovery of the notebook. The whispers from deeper within the shadows seemed to grow louder, echoing off the walls like a warning. He could feel Lila's presence beside him, her tension palpable as they both strained to listen. "Do you think someone else is down here?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila shook her head slowly, her eyes scanning the darkness. "I don't know, but we should be careful. This place feels different." As if on cue, another rustling sound echoed through the basement, sending a chill down Ethan's spine. He took a step forward, instinctively placing himself between Lila and the source of the noise. "Stay behind me," he instructed, feeling a surge of protectiveness. They moved cautiously toward the sound, hearts racing as they approached a wall lined with old shelves filled with dusty boxes and forgotten relics. Ethan reached for a flashlight on one of the shelves and flicked it on, illuminating their surroundings with a beam of light that cut through the darkness. The light revealed an array of items, old photographs, dusty books, and strange artifacts that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. But it was what lay at the end of the shelf that caught Ethan's attention, a hidden door slightly ajar, its frame covered in cobwebs. "Look," he said, pointing toward it. "There's something back there." Lila stepped closer, her curiosity piqued despite the fear etched on her face. "Should we open it?" Ethan hesitated for a moment but felt an undeniable pull toward the door as if it were calling to him. "We have to know what's behind it," he replied resolutely. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open wider, revealing a narrow passageway that led into complete darkness. The air was thick with dust and something else, an electric charge that made his skin prickle. "Are you ready?" he asked Lila, who nodded slowly but kept her distance. Together, they stepped into the passageway, Ethan leading the way as they ventured deeper into the unknown. The walls were damp and cold, and each step echoed ominously around them. As they moved further in, Ethan felt an odd sensation wash over him, a mix of excitement and dread. The passage twisted and turned until they finally emerged into a small room illuminated by an otherworldly glow emanating from crystals embedded in the walls. "What is this place?" Lila breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan scanned their surroundings. The room was filled with strange symbols carved into stone tablets lining the walls. In the center stood an altar adorned with various trinkets, each one seemingly imbued with its own unique energy. "This looks like some kind of ritual space," Ethan mused aloud. "But for what?" Lila stepped closer to one of the tablets and traced her fingers over its surface. "These symbols. I've seen them before in books about ancient cultures." "Do you know what they mean?" he asked eagerly. "I think they relate to protection and binding," she replied thoughtfully. "But I can't be sure without more time to study them." Just as she spoke, another noise echoed from behind them, a soft thud followed by hurried footsteps approaching from the passageway they had just come through. "Someone's coming!" Ethan exclaimed, adrenaline surging through him as he grabbed Lila's arm and pulled her toward a shadowy corner of the room. They pressed against the wall just as a figure emerged from the passage, a tall man dressed in dark clothing with an air of authority about him. His eyes scanned the room before settling on Ethan and Lila's hiding spot. "Show yourself," he commanded, his voice echoing ominously through the chamber. Ethan held his breath, heart racing as he exchanged worried glances with Lila. They remained silent, hoping to remain unseen. The man stepped further into the room, his gaze lingering on the altar before shifting back toward where Ethan and Lila were hidden. "I know you're here," he said menacingly. "You can't hide from me." Ethan felt Lila tense beside him, he could sense her fear radiating off her in waves. He knew they had to act quickly before they were discovered. "On my count," he whispered urgently to Lila. "We need to make a run for it." "Are you crazy?" she hissed back incredulously. "We don't have time to argue." Ethan insisted. 3, 2, 1. They burst out from their hiding spot simultaneously, sprinting toward another exit on the opposite side of the room just as the man turned to face them fully. "Stop!" he shouted angrily as they dashed past him. Ethan felt his heart pounding in his chest as they raced down another narrow corridor that branched off from the main chamber. Behind them, he could hear footsteps pounding against stone as their pursuer gave chase. "Where do we go?" Lila panted breathlessly as they rounded another corner. "I don't know," Ethan replied frantically as they continued running blindly through twisting passages that seemed to stretch endlessly before them. They finally stumbled upon another door at the end of one corridor, this one adorned with intricate carvings similar to those in the ritual space. "Help me push it open," Ethan shouted as he slammed against it with all his weight while Lila joined him in shoving against it with urgency. The door creaked open slowly but gave way just enough for them to slip inside before slamming shut behind them. They found themselves in yet another dimly lit room filled with strange artifacts, this time more advanced-looking machines interspersed among ancient relics. "What is this place?" Lila gasped again, looking around wide-eyed at their new surroundings. "I don't know," Ethan admitted breathlessly as he tried to catch his breath while scanning for any signs of danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, a low hum began to resonate throughout the room, the machines flickering to life around them as if responding to their presence. "What did we just walk into?" Lila whispered nervously, glancing around at each machine that pulsed with energy beneath their fingertips like living creatures waiting for commands. Before Ethan could respond, one of the machines activated fully, a holographic display projected above it showing images of strange landscapes and symbols that danced across its surface like fireflies in twilight. "It's like some kind of control panel," Ethan said in awe as he stepped closer to examine it more closely while Lila remained at his side watching intently. "What does it say?" she asked curiously while peering over his shoulder at swirling images above them that shifted rapidly between different scenes, some familiar while others felt entirely alien. "I'm not sure," Ethan murmured thoughtfully as he tried deciphering what lay before him when suddenly everything shifted again, images morphing into something darker, shadows creeping across landscapes filled with chaos and destruction unlike anything he'd ever seen before. "This isn't good," he muttered under his breath while feeling unease settle heavily within him once more, the weight of uncertainty pressing down upon them both like an invisible force threatening to crush their spirits beneath its weight. Just then came another loud bang against their door, the figure from earlier had found them. "We need to move," Ethan urged urgently as adrenaline surged through him once again, instinct taking over now more than ever before. But where could they go? What awaited them beyond this room filled with secrets waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to unlock its mysteries? Confrontation. The air crackled with tension as Ethan and Lila stood in the small room filled with strange machines and artifacts, their hearts racing from the adrenaline of their escape. The ominous banging against the door echoed in their ears, a constant reminder that they were not alone. Whoever had been pursuing them was relentless, and now they were trapped in a room filled with secrets they barely understood. "What do we do now?" Lila asked, her voice trembling slightly as she glanced at the door, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan felt a surge of determination. "We need to figure out what this place is and how we can use it to our advantage," he replied, his mind racing. "There has to be something here that can help us." He turned back to the holographic display still flickering above the central machine. The images had shifted again, now showcasing strange landscapes filled with towering structures and swirling energy. "Maybe we can find a way to access the house's systems from here," he suggested, moving closer to the console. Lila followed him, her curiosity piqued despite her fear. "What if we can turn the house's defenses against whoever is trying to get in?" she mused, her voice gaining strength. Ethan nodded, his mind working quickly as he began tapping on the controls. "Let's see what we can uncover." As he navigated through the holographic interface, symbols and diagrams appeared before them, revealing a complex network of systems that controlled every aspect of the house. "This is incredible," Lila breathed, leaning closer to read the information scrolling across the screen. "It's like a central hub for everything: security, maintenance, even energy management." "Exactly," Ethan said, his fingers flying over the controls as he searched for anything that could give them an edge. If we can access the security protocols, maybe we can lock down this room and stop whoever is trying to get in. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the door, shaking the walls of their sanctuary. Ethan's heart raced as he glanced back at Lila. Her expression was a mixture of fear and resolve. "Do it," she urged him. "We don't have much time." With renewed urgency, Ethan focused on bypassing the security locks. He could feel the pressure mounting as another blow struck against the door, this time more forceful than before. "Come on," he muttered under his breath as he worked furiously. Finally, he found a way into the security system and initiated lockdown protocols for their current location. The lights flickered ominously as alarms blared throughout the house. "It's working!" Ethan exclaimed, relief flooding through him momentarily. But just as quickly as it came, it was replaced by dread as he heard a voice echoing from outside, the same authoritative voice they had heard earlier. "Ethan Harper. You cannot hide from me. I know you're in there." The voice dripped with malice and authority, sending chills down Ethan's spine. "Who is that?" Lila asked sharply, her eyes darting toward the door. "I don't know," Ethan replied grimly. "But it sounds like they're not just after you, they're after me too." The realization settled heavily between them. Whatever danger lurked outside was far more significant than either of them had anticipated. "Why would someone be after you?" Lila pressed, her brow furrowed in concern. Ethan hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've made enemies in my past, people who would do anything to settle old scores." Lila's expression softened slightly as she took a step closer to him. "You don't have to face this alone," she said firmly. "We're in this together now." Before Ethan could respond, another crash reverberated through the door, this time accompanied by a low growl that sent shivers down his spine. The sound was primal and full of rage. It was clear that whoever was outside was losing patience. "We need to prepare ourselves," Ethan said quickly, scanning the room for anything they could use as weapons or shields against whatever was coming for them. As he rummaged through drawers and cabinets filled with strange tools and devices, Lila remained alert by his side. She picked up a small metallic object that resembled a baton but glowed faintly at its core. "What is this?" she asked curiously as she examined it closely. "I'm not sure," Ethan replied as he continued searching through various items scattered around them. "But it looks like it might be some sort of energy weapon." Lila activated it tentatively. A bright beam shot forth from one end, illuminating the room with an otherworldly glow. "This could work," she said confidently. Ethan nodded appreciatively at her resourcefulness before turning his attention back to the door just as another powerful strike hit it, this time splintering wood around its frame. "We don't have much time," Ethan shouted over the din of chaos surrounding them. "Let's get ready," Lila replied resolutely as she positioned herself beside him with her newfound weapon at the ready. They stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the door, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared for whatever threat lay on the other side. With one final blow against the door, the wood splintered violently apart, revealing a figure shrouded in darkness standing just beyond their threshold. "Ethan Harper," came that same commanding voice again, a figure emerging from shadows illuminated by flickering lights around them, a tall man clad in dark armor with piercing eyes that seemed to glow with an unnatural light. "You've meddled where you shouldn't have," he sneered menacingly as he stepped into view, a predatory grin spreading across his face like a wolf stalking its prey. Ethan felt Lila tense beside him. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but there was no turning back now. "What do you want?" Ethan demanded defiantly even though fear gnawed at him from within. The man chuckled darkly, a sound devoid of humor or warmth. "You know exactly what I want," he replied smoothly. "You've always been good at playing games, but this time, you've lost." Before Ethan could react further, shadows seemed to swirl around their adversary, dark tendrils reaching out toward them like living creatures intent on ensnaring their prey. "Get back!" Lila shouted instinctively as she raised her weapon and fired at one of the shadows. Energy crackled through the air upon impact but only momentarily halted its advance before continuing forward relentlessly. Ethan felt his heart race. They needed to fight back or risk being consumed by whatever darkness threatened to engulf them both. Focus on holding them off, he yelled at Lila while searching desperately for any means of escape or counterattack amidst chaos unfolding around them. But just then, the ground beneath their feet trembled violently, a rumble echoing through stone walls like thunder rolling across an open sky, and everything shifted once more. As reality twisted around them, the shadows receded momentarily, revealing glimpses into other worlds beyond comprehension, each one filled with horrors unimaginable yet tantalizingly close enough to touch if only they dared reach out. In that instant, their fates intertwined irrevocably, and together they would confront whatever lay ahead, united against darkness threatening not only themselves but all existence itself. Resolution and new beginnings. The chaos in the bathroom swirled around Julian and Ariel, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. The House AI's voice echoed ominously through the speakers, warning them of intruder containment protocols while the temperature continued to plummet. Yet, amidst the impending danger, a strange sense of calm enveloped them, binding their fates together in ways neither could have anticipated. "Julian," Ariel said breathlessly, her luminous violet eyes searching his. "We can't ignore what's happening. If the house is compromised, we need to act fast." He nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. "You're right. But first, we need to figure out how to disable those protocols. If they're targeting you, we can't let them trap you here." As he spoke, Julian felt a surge of determination course through him. He had spent years as a hunter, navigating treacherous terrains and confronting formidable foes. Now, he was faced with a different kind of challenge, one that required not only his skills but also his newfound connection with Ariel. "Let's make our way back to the control room," he suggested, glancing toward the door that led back into the main part of the house. "If we can access the main systems, we might be able to override the defenses." Ariel nodded, her expression resolute. "Together then." They stepped out of the bathroom, Julian leading the way as they navigated through the dimly lit corridors of his home. The atmosphere felt charged with energy, an electric hum that resonated between them as they moved in sync. As they reached the control room, Julian activated the holographic interface once more. The display flickered to life, illuminating their faces with a soft glow as they prepared to confront whatever awaited them. "All right," Julian said, focusing on the controls. "Let's see what we can do about those protocols." He began typing commands into the system, his fingers flying over the interface as he searched for a way to disable the security measures targeting Ariel. "Be careful," Ariel cautioned softly, her presence a steadying force beside him. "If they detect my energy signature." "I know," he interrupted gently but firmly. "But we have to take that risk." As he navigated through layers of security protocols and system settings, Julian felt a sense of urgency building within him. The AI's warnings echoed in the background, each alert heightening their sense of impending doom. "Here it is," he finally exclaimed as he located the section controlling intruder protocols. "I can override it, but it'll take a moment." "Do it," Ariel urged, her voice steady despite the tension surrounding them. Julian concentrated on executing commands while keeping an eye on any changes in their surroundings. The air felt charged with anticipation as he initiated the override sequence. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the house, a cacophony of sound that sent adrenaline surging through his veins. "I'm almost there," he shouted over the noise as he typed furiously. With one final keystroke, Julian activated the override just as a shadow loomed at the doorway, a figure emerging from darkness with an air of authority that sent chills down his spine. "It's too late," came that same menacing voice from before, the man who had pursued them relentlessly through their sanctuary. Julian's heart raced as he turned to face their adversary, determination igniting within him like wildfire. "You won't take her," he shouted defiantly. The man stepped forward, a predatory grin spreading across his face as he assessed them both. You think you can protect her? She is nothing but a relic, a creature meant for extinction. Ariel stepped beside Julian, her presence radiating strength and defiance. I'm not just a creature, she declared fiercely. I'm alive, and I will fight for my existence. The man scoffed at her words, but Julian could see something shift in his expression, an uncertainty creeping into his demeanor as if Ariel's conviction was starting to penetrate his arrogance. You're outnumbered, he sneered, gesturing toward unseen allies lurking just beyond their view. Julian felt a surge of fear but quickly pushed it aside. They had come too far to back down now. We may be outnumbered, he replied evenly, but we're not alone. With that declaration hanging in the air between them like an unbreakable bond forged in fire and chaos, something shifted within Ariel. Her violet skin shimmered with energy as she stepped forward defiantly. You may think you know what I am, she said slowly, her voice steady and unwavering. But you have no idea what I'm capable of. In that moment, something incredible happened. The very air around them crackled with energy as if responding to her words. Shadows flickered and danced along walls while light pulsed rhythmically from within her being, a manifestation of power that was both beautiful and terrifying. The man took an involuntary step back, surprise etched across his features as he realized just how wrong he had been about Ariel's true nature. Enough, he shouted angrily, but Julian could see cracks forming in his confidence, the facade beginning to crumble under pressure. Together, Julian urged Ariel softly while keeping his gaze fixed on their adversary. We can do this. With renewed resolve coursing through them both, they stood united against whatever darkness threatened to engulf their lives once more. In one swift motion, Ariel unleashed a wave of energy that surged forth like a tidal wave crashing against its shore, illuminating everything around them with brilliant light while sending shockwaves through their surroundings. The man stumbled back against the wall, the force of her power knocking him off balance as shadows retreated from sight, uncertainty painted across his features now replaced by fear. You think you can defeat me, he spat defiantly even as doubt crept into his voice, a last-ditch effort to regain control over this chaotic situation spiraling out from beneath him. I don't think so, Julian countered confidently, stepping forward alongside Ariel, who stood resolute beside him, her energy radiating strength like never before. Together, they faced down their foe, a united front against all odds, determined not only to protect themselves but also each other amidst turmoil threatening everything they held dear. As shadows receded further into oblivion, the man found himself cornered, realization dawning upon him that this battle was lost before it had even begun. With one final surge of power, Ariel unleashed another wave, sending their adversary crashing against walls until finally collapsing onto floorboards below, defeated yet alive. Breathless silence fell over them, echoes fading away, leaving only stillness behind, the remnants of chaos dissipating into memory. We did it, Julian breathed, astonished, glancing sideways at Ariel, whose eyes sparkled with triumph yet held an undercurrent of vulnerability beneath surface calmness. Yes, she replied softly, allowing herself momentarily lean against him, seeking comfort after battle fought together side by side. But even amidst victory, doubts lingered unspoken between breaths shared, questions swirling like autumn leaves caught within tempestuous winds. What happens now? Julian asked, finally breaking silence, weighing implications heavy upon both their hearts, uncertainty lingering in air around them like specters haunting every corner. Ariel hesitated for just a moment before meeting his gaze directly, her expression shifting from triumph into something deeper, filled with emotion raw yet undeniable. I don't know, she admitted honestly, but there was strength in vulnerability too, a promise lingering unspoken between them forged through trials faced together. But I do know one thing, she continued firmly, determination shining brightly within those luminous eyes filled with purpose, once more ready face whatever lay ahead, together hand in hand forging new paths forward, no longer alone. In that moment, their fates intertwined, irrevocably bound by shared experiences endured through fire and chaos, transforming into something beautiful emerging from ashes left behind. As they stood together amidst remnants left behind, the world outside continued turning, unaware of battles fought within walls surrounding them. And so began new chapter unfolding before them, filled with possibilities endless, waiting patiently for two souls brave enough embrace journey ahead.